Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show that ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Venchele Saint Dic. She is the founder of Pathway Coach Writing. She is a writing coach and also an author. Welcome to the show, Venchele.
Thank you so much for having me here, AJ. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very good, and it's nice to talk. If I understand, you are calling from the very place that power emanates from Washington D.C. Am I right?
Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. A hotbed of activity there, especially with this election season going on. In India, we have elections next year. There also, you've got the elections there. So here, in the midst
Absolutely.
of all these elections, let's talk about something much more, much more pragmatic, where we'll talk about a writer's journey from blank page to published masterpiece. So first, to understand from you about Pathway Coach writing itself, Venchele, tell us about what do you do as at Pathway Coach Writing, and then we'll understand this whole
Oh,
journey, a
from
writer's
there.
journey to the masterpiece.
No, absolutely. So at Pathway Coach Writing, I help writers and businesses like write stories that mirror their brand, but also is very personal, with their audience. And so I work on a variety of projects, including but not excluding manuscripts, um, novels, nonfiction, and fiction work, and also dissertations as well, believe it or not. And it's interesting because I am currently a doctoral student in a program, and so it's been very interesting to see that all of the work that I was doing beforehand with my clients who were going through that process, starting to put the pieces together, even though I am at the very beginning of the journey myself. And so that's what I do at Pathway Coach Writing. But again, it wasn't always as clear cut as I'm making it seem, just because when we're talking about this subject from the draft page to being published, it's a whole process and it looks different for everyone. And so I'm glad that we're going to have this discussion today and flesh this out.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, to understand from now, the world has changed since this Chat GPT, Bing, and hundreds of all these things have come up. And so, what do authors, potential authors, or budding authors, or whatever way we may want to call them, what are they coming to you for nowadays? Because there is this Chat GPT available to them, and you say, you can just write your book down there. So why would they need somebody? I'm just trying to understand the
No,
present
absolutely,
situation.
absolutely. And again, like, this is coming from um when you look at the writing editing industry, it has significantly changed, since the inception of ChatGPT. The only issue that I have with that platform is that even though you're able to save time, it's not imbued with human emotions. And so clients still come to me to get content feedback. And I think that's extremely important because, as we both know, when you have a brand, people support and they are loyal to the brand based on how they resonate with what you're saying. And even like for myself, I think like that's the whole part of staying up to date with trends and patterns. Like, I have even tried Chat GPT for myself, where I essentially was sort of experimenting in the beginning and trying to see what it was capable of doing. There's no doubt about it, it saves people time and effort, but I would caution to always double check, to double check the outputs that come from those platforms, um, because you want to make sure that even the language that's being used is very inclusive. I mean, yes, you can always type a command, but ChatGPT, when it's all said and done, is um, a bit robotic. And so you would still have to go and make some changes, because it cannot capture all the nuances, even if it has been fed with loads of data from the internet up until, I believe, 2021. So
Absolutely, absolutely. A robot has to be robotic. How can it develop human emotions? And second thing is, the one big challenge that I see is that even in the US there was this old discussion about that whatever comes out of any of these AI tools you cannot have it copyrighted until unless you specifically go and prove it that it's an original piece of work, because that whole data has been trained on millions and millions of others data, and that is where I guess you cannot claim it. Secondly, if I understand, how will you use a chat gpt or anything else for an original writing, because it won't be able to think like that. So when you talk of a book or something for authors, what are the type of what's the genre that you generally deal with, or is it like any sort of writing will work for you?
I think any sort of writing will work for me. And I would say that, I go based on, I use evidence-based data to inform like how I work with my clients. So for example, first things first, even if a client wanted to use ChatGPT, they still need to have an outline. They still need to understand, um, carefully understand the topic that they're going to discuss and what is expected, from the audience that they're going to write to. And that's something that Chat GPT cannot do. And so I really focus on the brainstorming. If nothing else, I think that anyone can write a paper in 5 days, but the brainstorming piece is extremely important and dictates the quality of the work later on. And so that's what I work on with my clients. I try to help them brainstorm an outline, try to understand the topic at hand, and then start their initial draft by following their outline and trying to create connections and determining causal links. I mean, these series of steps that I just outlined take time, and it's not something that can easily be generated by ChatGPT, since they're not an expert on the subject.
Right, right. And even if chat gpt were not there, people would need a lot of hand holding from people who can look at everything from a distance and who are not involved into it in the way a writer is into all those characters, if there are characters, or even in business writing or any sort of a writing. What are the general things, we will come to the writer's block, but what are the challenges, the stumbling blocks that the writers face generally? One is they want your feedback. Are there other problems that they face? Do they want to be motivated, or are they really authors who have got a good amount of experience and they can do it themselves?
I think that's a great question. I think some of the challenges that some authors may face is their concept of time. Sometimes I'll work with clients who will say, well, I need an hour or two, to work on this book, without realizing that life goes on, whether or not, you're writing a novel. And 2 hours is a long time, and I think that the mind, that's why you have all of these techniques, where that addresses like just the short span that we spend when doing anything, because the mind cannot do something repetitively for a long period of time without getting bored, without getting distracted. So I usually tell my clients to maybe focus on blocks, like just small blocks of time, like maybe 25 minutes or 15 minutes a day, and then jot their ideas down. It doesn't need to be coherent sentences, because that's the whole point of the peer review process towards the end, when you have people looking at your work and giving you feedback. And so there's no need, to have a perfect, that first draft will never be perfect. Let's just face it. It's never going to be perfect, but unfortunately, you do, even for those who are expedient with time, um, that's one of the challenges that they face. It's how do they create more time for themselves to dedicate to the writing process.
Right. So nowadays, writers, do they come to you for mostly, a lot of people talk that you write a book and you will develop that thought leadership and it will get you a good, profile built through writing a book. Is that how do you see this part of book writing? Because that has flooded the whole internet with many books which no very few people want to read, or only some people want to read. How do you differentiate between those writing en masse and just creating something and then tell that I am an author, and one is the one which we are talking about is a masterpiece? How do you look as a writing coach, as a founder of a company? Obviously you have to look at the business side also, but as
Yes.
somebody who is a writing coach, how do you look at this whole concept and try to calibrate both of them?
I think that they're not mutually exclusive. I think that you can use your book, to build a brand. It's just a matter of, again, like I said, understanding, the needs. It's all, it's documented in behavioral economics, really understanding what your audience needs, and while making sure that your book sells. But that's a tough question to answer, to be honest with you, because maybe what sells is not what resonates with the author. It's the authors or the writers who are writing on these topics. And so I think that that's where, time needs to be dedicated to do sort of like a needs assessment, and then try to meet people halfway. You don't give them everything that they want, but you get, but so that you don't lose yourself in the process. Because when it's all said and done, the output or the overall quality of that written manuscript has to reflect like that you've put your soul and heart into it, as well. Even if, like, from a business perspective, you don't want to write a book where it's just going to sit on the shelf like picking up dust. so um so I think it's a tough question to answer, to be honest with you, because nowadays, the industry has shifted, from, people who are just writing a book just to say that they are authors, to now, using books as a marketing brand. And so things have shifted very quickly within the past decade, actually.
Right, right. So, what is a masterpiece in today's time? Means, is it something which is gone now? We will not find it anymore, or because people keep on questioning now, where, how have you written? Who? It's very difficult nowadays to differentiate between original thoughts and. So, how do you look at a creation of a masterpiece? Is it possible today in today's time?
I think it is possible to create a masterpiece, but again, it's who is defining what a masterpiece is. Because I could write a book and think that it is the best thing that happened since sliced bread. And then I send it for peer review, and then they say it needs more work. I think that when we talk about these terms like a masterpiece, best-selling book, or what have you, we have to look at who is defining those terms and how they measuring success. Um, Even like when I think about the word masterpiece, I'm a little bit torn, because I think it can be done, but then again, let's not forget that when you read multiple books over time, you see a pattern and trend of people sampling work from other people as well. And so what is really a masterpiece if that's what you're doing? Just like, and this concept also applies to music. Sometimes you'll listen to an artist, and then it's not until years later you realize, but that sound in the background was sampled from a previous album. of someone who is no longer alive. Um, and so I'm not really sure if we have become a culture of are we embracing originality or copycats? I think
Right.
that's I'm not sure if I'm sure there's still going to be some people out there who value originality or original work, but I feel like as we are a culture, a consumerism type of culture, maybe when it comes to the writing editing industry, we're moving away from originality and towards, just simpling work from other people and then branding it as original. I mean, we can apply this concept even with YouTube influencers as well. Are they producing original work, or are they, um, again, like picking a topic and then just like in most health self-help books, just addressing subtopics within the topic, that has been maybe, said or written in a different way by different people over time.
Absolutely, absolutely, and obviously the market has to honor the writer, and the writer will honor the
Yes.
whole bunch of the new generation with something called a masterpiece. As long as that does not happen, the wait will continue. But yes, it is market which determines, and not everybody has that much of patience to fight all these things. Be that as it may, there is now let's come to the writer's block. One of the big reasons that while when the AI on all these tools were being launched was that for authors, writers, and all these things, it will take care of your writer's block. So is it now that the uh, tackling of this writer's block is now solely on the AI tools, or is it are there other ways one can tackle the writer's block? How does that work?
Um, I mean, there are a series of exercises that I provide to my clients that help them define their values, like series of prompts that can help them tackle writer's block. And so I would say, if nothing else, if people really don't have the time, they could use AI to come up with some prompts instead of having AI write write on their behalf. And so that's what I would say. But I typically use prompts from books that I read, or on similar topics that my clients are writing about. I come up with these prompts and then I send it to them so that it can generate some ideas for their book projects.
Right, right, Michelle. In a nutshell, in today's time, then, after having discussed this, what are the skills that are required to be a writer in terms of an author? In few things, so that somebody will come to know. Okay, these are the things that I cannot compromise with, and this is very much required if I at all want to be author. Because a lot of advertisements I see, you don't need to write even one word, and your book will get written. So I get very confused. I want to understand if that is a fact, that is the way it will be, or actually you will need some skills, and then your polishing has to be done from people like you who have that experience and understanding.
I think, again, to piggyback on what I said in terms of, again, like you had said, to honor the market. I would say that one of the skill sets that writers should have is, critical thinking skills, strong analytical skills, and not so much focus on what is said, but what is not being said. Because that's what you're trying to address in any piece of work. Even when you're writing a blog, you're trying to do a gap analysis.
Right.
And so I think that it's extremely important, even when you intend to use AI, you still want to critique, what's being shared with you. I do that all the time. When I read a book, and also you can find it in journal articles as well. You typically they'll say in the discussion section, well, there needs to be more research on this topic. And this is what I focus on. This is what I focus my analysis on. And I ask questions. And so you have to also have an inquisitive mind in order to become a successful writer, or just in life in general.
Absolutely, absolutely. There is much to learn about writing, whether however number of tools come in, and for that, some part they will have to learn with their own skills. For more, they will have to come to you. So, what is the best way for people to connect with you, learn from you, and also engage with you professionally, so that they are able to
Absolutely.
write a masterpiece if possible?
Absolutely. So you can find me on LinkedIn, on Instagram, just using my name on the screen, or Pathway Coach Writing, because I have a personal and a business page. And then also they can, people can look at my website, because I also have a blog. I also post resources that they can use. And again, I'm not just talking the talk, I'm walking the walk. I'm also taking classes. Like I think that writing is an iterative process. You never stop learning. And like I said before, in terms of developing your critical thinking skills and analytical skills, the best way to become a great writer is to read, even if it's just 10 pages a day. I think it makes a huge difference. So that's where people can find me. And I'm hoping to connect with whomever come my way, because this work is so critically important. And we understand that words do matter. Whatever, when you speak or when you write something, you always want to be mindful of the words that you use, because depending on the words that you use, it creates the intended outcome that you want, or it creates a complete disaster. So I think it's needed in our generation, and then to learn to use our words to create a positive impact.
Absolutely, absolutely. As if I'm able to quote correctly, as Carl Sagan said, that books have that much of power, that even after hundreds and thousands of years, you will be able to connect with somebody who have been alive long back. So I hope the present generation comes out with at least some original pieces, so that the future generations, when they connect with such writings, they feel actually that it was a great writer and not a lousy one. On this note,
Mm.
it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.